They expected humanity to arrive with fleets. They prepared surrender speeches, defensive alliances, secret weapons hidden behind dying stars. Because history had taught the galaxy one rule: when a species survives extinction, it comes back angry. But humanity didn't send warships. They sent a memory. And that terrified the galaxy far more. The Grand Convocation Chamber had witnessed empires rise and vanish like sparks in vacuum. Ancient delegates filled its spiraling tiers, beings older than some suns, wrapped in authority earned through conquest, manipulation, and time. They came expecting Judgment Day. Humanity had earned it. 2 cycles earlier, a coalition strike meant to contain humanity's expansion had erased an entire human frontier system. Officially, it was called a miscalculation, a statistical tragedy. Unofficially, it was genocide. 2,300,000 lives extinguished in less than an hour. The Council assumed humanity would retaliate the way every advanced civilization eventually did, overwhelming force followed by absolute dominance. That was the pattern. Always, power proved itself through destruction. So, when the chamber doors opened, silence fell like gravity. Only one human entered. No guards, no armor, no weapons, just a woman carrying a small sealed case. The delegates exchanged uneasy glances. Predatory species sensed no threat. Logical species detected no tactical advantage. Empathic species felt something worse, grief dense enough to suffocate thought. The human ambassador walked slowly to the center platform. Every step echoed, not loudly, but heavily, as if history itself followed behind her. She placed the case on the pedestal and waited. No speech began. No accusation came. Just waiting. And somehow that was unbearable. Finally, the presiding elder demanded explanation. What does humanity bring before this council? The woman opened the case. Inside rested something small, fragile, carefully preserved. At first, many delegates didn't understand what they were seeing. Then translation systems updated biological recognition. A human child's skull. The chamber's environmental systems registered sudden fluctuations, stress pheromones, defensive hormone spikes, neurological distress across dozens of species. The ambassador spoke softly, not angrily, not loudly, soft enough that every being leaned closer. This, she said, is why we are here. No threats followed, no demands, only silence stretching longer than protocol allowed. She began describing the child. Not strategically, personally. A name, a favorite color, a habit of drawing stars incorrectly because she believed space should look warmer. A laugh recorded by surviving relatives. Each detail landed harder than any weapon ever fired in that chamber. Delegates who had authorized the strike reviewed archived reports in real time, casualty numbers scrolling across their vision fields. Numbers they had approved in seconds. Now, turning into someone impossible to ignore. The ambassador looked up. We were told this loss was acceptable, she said calmly. Necessary for stability. Her voice never rose. And somehow that made it worse. You expected revenge, she continued. You prepared for war. She paused. Every translation node in the chamber focused entirely on her next words. But before humanity decides what comes next, we needed you to understand what you already did. The chamber grew impossibly still, because something was wrong. The humans weren't demanding punishment. They weren't declaring dominance. They were making the galaxy feel, and across thousands of watching worlds, civilizations began to realize a terrifying possibility. Humanity's response might not follow any pattern the universe understood, and when a species breaks the rules of power, no one knows what comes after. The ambassador closed the case, and then she said the sentence that would divide the galaxy forever. We forgive you. The chamber erupted, but not in relief, in fear, because forgiveness from a species capable of vengeance meant something far more dangerous was beginning. And the elders suddenly understood. Humanity had not come to end the cycle. They had come to rewrite it. And the galaxy was completely unprepared for what that meant. Forgiveness should have ended the tension. Instead, it made the chamber colder. Because every elder race understood one universal truth: mercy from a powerful is never simple. It carries intention, strategy, consequence, and humanity had just offered it without asking for anything in return. That broke logic. The presiding elder leaned forward, ancient eyes narrowing. "Human ambassador," he said carefully, "clarify your statement. Are you withdrawing claims of retaliation?" Across the chamber, military observers activated silent alert channels. Defense fleets shifted positions near human territory. Analysts predicted deception, psychological warfare, or delayed aggression. The ambassador answered immediately. Yes. One word. No hesitation. Shock rippled outward like a gravitational wave. Predator species interpreted weakness. Diplomatic species sensed manipulation. Machine civilizations calculated probabilities and failed repeatedly to produce coherent projections. Because forgiveness without leverage made no evolutionary sense. The elder races had survived precisely because they never forgave existential threats. One delegate finally voiced what everyone feared. If humanity does not seek justice, the crystalline envoy asked, what prevents this council from repeating its mistake? The question hung heavy. It was honest and brutal. The ambassador nodded slowly, as if she had waited for it. Nothing, she said. The chamber erupted into overlapping speech. Translation systems struggled under simultaneous outrage and confusion. Nothing? No deterrence? No punishment? Even sympathetic species recoiled, but the human raised a hand gently, and somehow the room quieted again. Nothing, she repeated, except understanding. She activated the chamber's central display. Stars filled the air, thousands of systems glowing like scattered embers. Then the lights began to dim. One by one, entire civilizations vanished from a map. Extinct species, fallen empires, cultures erased long before humanity reached space. A slow, silent graveyard. This, she said, is the history of our galaxy. The display accelerated. Wars, collapses, resource purges, preventive annihilations justified as security measures. Each extinction traced back to the same decision-making logic the Council had used against humanity. Fear, preemptive violence, statistical sacrifice. The pattern became undeniable. Civilizations didn't fall because enemies were strong. They fell because eventually everyone learned to strike first. The ambassador's voice softened. You thought eliminating us would preserve stability, she said. Every empire believes that before it becomes another dark star on this map, delegates watch their own histories appear among the conflicts. Some shifted uncomfortably. Others turned away. Because humanity wasn't accusing them. They were showing them themselves. Then the display changed again. A projection of humanity's future military capability appeared. Not current strength, but estimated growth curves. Gasps echoed. Human expansion rates were unprecedented. Within 3 generations, projections showed humanity capable of overwhelming every major power combined. The implications struck instantly. Humanity could take revenge. Easily. The ambassador let that realization settle before speaking again. We are not forgiving because we are weak, she said quietly. We are forgiving because revenge guarantees this map gains another dead civilization. Silence returned, deeper now, heavier. For the first time, fear shifted direction. Not fear of human aggression. Fear of human restraint. Because restraint meant choice. And choice meant humanity had judged the entire galactic system and found it broken. The presiding elder spoke again, voice unsteady. Then what does humanity want? The ambassador closed the projection. Her answer came slowly. We want to know why the galaxy stopped trying to be better. No demands, no ultimatums, just a question. And somehow, that question felt more dangerous than any declaration of war. Because the Council realized they were no longer negotiating survival. They were being asked to confront guilt. And across the chamber, younger delegates, those born long after the age of conquest, began looking at the elders differently. Not with respect, but doubt. The political balance of the galaxy shifted in that moment, not through force, through shame, and the elders sensed it immediately. Humanity had not attacked their fleets. They had attacked their legitimacy, and if that spread, empires wouldn't fall to humans. They would collapse from within. The presiding elder understood the threat too late, because outside the chamber, broadcasts of humanity's message were already reaching billions, and entire civilizations were starting to ask the same forbidden question. What if power didn't have to mean domination? The answer, however, would ignite a crisis no one saw coming. The first world to fracture wasn't human. It was one of the oldest empires in the galaxy, and that terrified everyone. Within hours of the convocation broadcast, the Theral Dominion experienced something it had not faced in 12,000 cycles. Public disagreement. Citizens gathered in orbital forums demanding access to historical war records long classified by the ruling caste. Young scholars replayed the human ambassador's words frame by frame, comparing them against official narratives taught for generations. The conclusions were uncomfortable. Their empire had not risen through wisdom. It had risen through fear. Across dozens of systems, archived footage surfaced. Civilizations erased under doctrines nearly identical to the one used against humanity. For the first time, the Dominion's population saw conquest not as glory, but as repetition. And once doubt enters a civilization, it spreads faster than plague. Back in the Grand Chamber, emergency sessions stacked upon one another. Elder delegates argued openly now, abandoning centuries of controlled diplomacy. This is psychological warfare, hissed one reptilian minister. Humanity destabilizes us without firing a weapon. They revealed truth, countered a younger envoy quietly. Truth is irrelevant if it destroys order. That sentence echoed longer than intended, because many delegates realized it summarized their entire history. Order had always mattered more than justice. Humanity had simply said it aloud. The presiding elder requested a private meeting with the human ambassador. She agreed immediately. No negotiation, no conditions, which somehow made the elders even more uneasy. The meeting chamber was smaller, older, built when the council still believed unity was possible rather than enforced. The elder studied the human carefully. "You understand what you have started," he said. "Yes," she replied. "Civilizations are destabilizing." "Yes." "Your message may collapse governments." She nodded again. The elder's voice lowered. "Why risk galactic chaos instead of ensuring revenge? Power would have been simpler." The ambassador took a long breath. Then she said something no elder had expected. "Because we already know what revenge feels like." The elder waited. Humans were young compared to elder species, but their recorded history was dense with conflict. Still, the calm certainty in her voice suggested something deeper. She activated a personal projection. Human history unfolded, wars, genocides, collapses, recoveries. Not hidden, not edited. Every atrocity humanity had committed against itself displayed openly. The elder recoiled slightly. "You show your own failures?" "We study them," she corrected. "Constantly." Scenes shifted. Former enemies rebuilding together, nations reconciling after devastation, memorials built not to glorify victory but to remember loss. "We learn something slowly," she continued. "Winning a war doesn't end it. Someone always inherits the anger." The elder felt something unfamiliar. Envy. Because elder civilizations erased uncomfortable memories. Humans preserve theirs. Painfully. Intentionally. "You believe remembrance prevents repetition?" he asked. "No," she said gently, "but forgetting guarantees it." The words lingered between them. Outside, reports continued arriving, protests spreading, younger species demanding reforms, alliances reconsidering hierarchical treaties. The galaxy was changing faster than anyone predicted, and the elders were losing narrative control. The elder leaned closer. "What happens if the council rejects your philosophy?" The ambassador met his gaze steadily. "Then humanity will protect itself," she said. For the first time, steel entered her voice. Not anger, Certainty. We will not rule the galaxy, she added, but we will not allow it to repeat the mistakes that created this. A subtle distinction. Not conquerors, not victims, something new. Guardians, perhaps. The realization unsettled him more than war ever could. Because Guardians do not seek permission. They act when others fail. The Elder suddenly understood why forgiveness frightened him. Humanity had not surrendered power. They had redefined its purpose. And if younger civilizations embraced that idea, the age of Elder dominance would end without a single battle. An aide rushed into the chamber, breaking protocol. Emergency transmission, they said, urgently. Multiple vassal species are requesting independent representation, citing human doctrine. The Elder closed his eyes. It had begun. Not revolution. Awakening. And awakenings cannot be controlled. He looked back at the ambassador. What happens next? She answered quietly. That depends on whether the galaxy chooses fear or responsibility. Outside the chamber, fleets began mobilizing anyway, because not all elders were ready to let history change peacefully. And somewhere in deep space, a classified armada received orders that would test humanity's promise of forgiveness. Orders that would force humanity to prove whether mercy truly had limits. The first shot wasn't meant to start a war. It was meant to prove humanity wrong. Far beyond the Council's central systems, hidden within a dust-choked nebula, the Kareth Ascendancy fleet powered its weapons for the first time in centuries. Officially, the Ascendancy supported peace. Unofficially, they believed stability required fear. And humanity had just removed fear from the equation. To them, forgiveness wasn't wisdom. It was vulnerability. The Ascendancy High Strategist watched projections of spreading unrest across the galaxy, vassal species questioning authority, trade unions dissolving, younger races demanding equality. All trace back to one moment. One human. One skull. One sentence. If the humans are allowed to redefine power, the strategist said coldly, every hierarchy collapses. His officers waited. They already knew the conclusion. Humanity had to be reminded of reality, not annihilated. That would create martyrs, just wounded enough to expose weakness. A demonstration strike, precise, contained, deniable. A border colony would suffice. Orders were given, weapons charged, and history prepared to repeat itself. The target was Haven 12, a small human settlement orbiting a quiet orange star. Agricultural domes, research stations, families rebuilding after earlier wars. Not strategic, not militarized, perfect. As Ascendancy ships slipped from hyperspace, colony sensors detected them instantly. Panic alarms sounded. Evacuation protocols activated. But something unexpected followed. No human warships arrived. No defensive armada emerged from hidden jump points. Instead, a single transmission broadcast toward the attacking fleet. Open channel. No encryption. The Ascendancy commander frowned and allowed it through. The same human ambassador appeared. Calm, tired, but unmistakably resolute. You don't have to do this, she said. The strategist almost laughed. Your forgiveness has destabilized civilizations, he replied. We restore balance. By killing civilians again? By proving power still governs reality. A pause. Then the ambassador said, quietly, you think this will make us afraid? It will remind you of consequences. The strategist prepared firing authorization. Yet something in her expression made him hesitate. Not fear, not anger, sadness, deep enough to unsettle even hardened commanders. You misunderstand humanity, she said. We already know consequences. She transmitted colony data voluntarily. Population lists, personal messages being recorded by families preparing for impact, children saying goodbye, partners promising to meet again somewhere beyond death. The strategist stiffened. Why would she show this? Psychological manipulation? Perhaps. But several officers began lowering sensory input, unable to process the emotional intensity flooding their translation systems. We are not sending this to stop you, she continued softly. We are sending it so you cannot pretend you didn't know. Silence spread across the bridge. The difference was subtle but devastating. Humanity wasn't pleading. They were witnessing. Forcing accountability in real time, the strategist clenched his claws. Fire. Weapons aligned. Energy gathered. And then, alert signals exploded across ascendancy systems. Multiple hyperspace ruptures detected. Dozens. Hundreds. The bridge filled with new contacts. Ships emerging faster than sensors could classify them. But they weren't human. Not entirely. Vessels for minor species, former vassals, independent traders, exploration guilds, civilizations considered too weak to matter. They formed a defensive line around Haven 12, uncoordinated, outgunned, but present. A transmission flooded all channels. We stand with humanity. Another followed, and with the future they offered. Then another, and another. Within minutes, a civilian coalition fleet surrounded the colony, not ordered by humans, not commanded by any empire. They came by choice. The strategist stared in disbelief. This had never happened before. Weak species did not unite voluntarily. Fear normally kept them divided, but humanity had changed something fundamental. They had inspired loyalty without domination, which meant power was shifting beyond elder control. The ambassador spoke again. "We did not call them," she said quietly. "They chose." The strategist realized the terrifying truth. If he fired now, he wouldn't just attack humanity. He would attack hope itself. And every watching civilization would see exactly who defended life and who destroyed it. His tactical advantage evaporated, because violence now carried consequences no weapon could erase. He hesitated, just long enough for doubt to spread among his own crew. And doubt, once born, is impossible to kill. Outside, more ships continued arriving. Not soldiers, believers. The strategist faced a decision that would define an era. Prove strength through destruction, or admit humanity had already won without firing a single shot. His finger hovered over the command, and the entire galaxy held its breath. The galaxy learned something new that day. Courage is contagious, and fear finally had competition. On the Ascendancy flagship, silence crushed the command deck. Hundreds of civilian vessels floated between their weapons and Haven. 12 ships never designed for war. Cargo haulers, research craft, medical frigates, even private transports carrying families who had chosen to stand in orbit rather than watch another species die alone. Tactically, it made no sense. Emotionally, it changed everything. The strategist studied the sensor feed again and again, searching for hidden human warships. There were none. No ambush. No trap. Just choice. And that unsettled him more than any fleet ever could. Why would they risk extinction for another species? One officer whispered. No one answered, because elder civilizations had long ago abandoned that question. Across the galaxy, billions watched live transmissions. Networks translated the unfolding standoff into thousands of languages. Younger species felt something unfamiliar rising, not fear of power, but belief in agency. If weak civilizations could stand together voluntarily, then perhaps they had never truly been powerless. Protests transformed into cooperation movements. Trade, rivals, opened communication channels. Ancient grudges paused under a single shared realization. Humanity had shown an alternative, and people wanted it. Back in the Grand Chamber, elder delegates panicked. "This is insurrection," one declared. "No," another corrected quietly. "It is imitation." The distinction mattered. Rebellion could be crushed. Imitation spreads endlessly. Emergency proposals flooded the council floor. Sanctions against humanity, media suppression, military intervention. But every measure faced resistance from younger representatives now emboldened by public support. Authority fractured in real time. The presiding elder watched centuries of political structure unravel and finally understood the scale of humanity's action. They had not attacked governments. They had changed expectations. And expectations are impossible to police. At Haven 12, tension peaked. The strategist's claws trembled slightly above the firing control. He replayed the ambassador's earlier words. "We are forgiving because revenge guarantees another dead civilization." He had dismissed it as rhetoric. Now he saw the trap. If he fired, humanity would not retaliate immediately. They would mourn publicly, remember openly, and the galaxy would judge the ascendancy forever. Victory would become moral defeat. A junior officer spoke, hesitantly. "Commander, our own civilian channels are receiving messages." He authorized playback. Ascendancy citizens appeared on screen, scholars, workers, even veterans. They were watching the same broadcast, and many were pleading, "Stand down. Do not become what history condemns. We don't want another massacre." The strategist froze. Internal dissent had never reached a military bridge before. Humanity's influence had crossed borders faster than fleets. For the first time in his career, obedience conflicted with conscience. He realized something horrifying. Humanity hadn't weakened the galaxy. They had awakened it, and awakened populations cannot be ruled the old way. The ambassador's voice returned, gentle but unwavering. "No one has to die today." She wasn't speaking only to him. She was speaking to everyone watching, offering a way out. Not defeat, choice. The strategist slowly lowered his hand. Weapons powered down. A collective exhale swept across thousands of ships. Cheers erupted across civilian channels. Some crews cried openly. Others simply sat in stunned silence, realizing they had just witnessed history pivot. The Ascendancy fleet turned away, retreating, not destroyed, not humiliated, changed, and that difference echoed louder than victory. But celebration lasted only minutes, because encrypted alerts suddenly flooded the Council network. Multiple elder empires were mobilizing fleets simultaneously, not against humanity, against each other. Old rivalries reignited by weakening authority. The fragile balance that had held the galaxy together for millennia was collapsing faster than anyone anticipated. Humanity had stopped one war, only to reveal hundreds waiting beneath the surface. The ambassador watched new conflict projections appear. Her expression darkened for the first time. Forgiveness had opened the door. Now chaos threatened to rush through it, and humanity would soon face a question far harder than revenge. How do you save a galaxy that doesn't yet know how to live without fear? Peace, it turned out, was louder than war, and far more dangerous. Within days of the Haven 12 standoff, the galaxy entered a state no historian had language for. Not war, not peace, uncertainty. Old alliances weakened as vassal species demanded independence. Trade routes stalled while governments argued over legitimacy. Military fleets repositioned defensively, each empire afraid another might strike first in the growing instability. For centuries, fear had maintained order. Now fear no longer worked the same way, and without it everything trembled. Emergency convocation was declared. Every major power attended. This time, however, the chamber looked different. Younger delegates filled seats once occupied only by elder representatives. Observers from minor civilizations stood openly instead of hidden behind diplomatic sponsors. The balance of voices had shifted. The presiding elder opened proceedings with visible exhaustion. "The galaxy approaches systemic collapse," he announced. "Conflicts are escalating across 12 sectors. Data projections confirmed it, border skirmishes, resource disputes, ancient territorial claims resurfacing." Humanity's message had not created hatred. It had removed suppression, and unresolved wounds were now bleeding openly. All eyes turned toward the human ambassador, not as an accused species, as a problem solver, a role humanity had never asked for. She stood slowly. "We expected this," she admitted. Murmurs spread. Instantly. "You planned for instability?" one delegate demanded. "We prepared for honesty," she replied. She activated another projection, not of wars, but of human history again. This time, it showed reconstruction. Former enemies forming unions. Global agreements forged after catastrophic conflicts. Institutions built painfully over generations to prevent repetition of violence. Change always looks like chaos at first, she said. When people stop being afraid, they begin demanding fairness. Systems resist. Conflict follows. The chamber listened carefully. Because humanity wasn't speaking theoretically, they were describing experience. We survived this stage, she continued, not by enforcing peace, but by building responsibility. A new proposal appeared. The Accord Initiative, not an empire, not an alliance. A voluntary framework where disputes would be judged by mixed-species councils composed primarily of smaller civilizations, those most affected by elder conflicts. Gasps echoed. It redistributed influence. Radically, you would give decision power to weaker species, an elder asked incredulously. The ambassador nodded. Because those who suffer most from war value peace differently. The idea was revolutionary and terrifying. Power flowing downward instead of upward contradicted every galactic precedent. Yet, younger delegates leaned forward, hopeful. The presiding elder hesitated. What ensures compliance? He asked quietly. The ambassador answered without hesitation. Nothing. Shock again. Participation must be chosen, she added. Peace enforced by fear becomes another form of domination. The chamber fell into deep contemplation. Humanity was offering guidance, not control. A path, not a throne. Then alarms interrupted proceedings. A border clash between two elder empires had escalated unexpectedly. Fleet casualties rising rapidly. Retaliation cycles predicted within hours. War was about to ignite anyway. All debate became irrelevant. The council turned toward humanity instinctively. What will you do? Someone asked. The ambassador hesitated for the first time since arriving, because this moment mattered more than any speech. If humanity intervened militarily, they would become another ruling power. If they did nothing, the galaxy might collapse. She finally spoke. We will protect lives, she said carefully, not sides. Moments later, humanity's fleets moved for the first time since the genocide. Not toward enemies, toward evacuation corridors. Human ships placed themselves between combat zones and civilian populations, broadcasting safe passage coordinates to both warring sides equally. They did not fire. They shielded, rescued, endured attacks without retaliation while extracting non-combatants. Across countless systems, beings watched human vessels absorb damage to protect strangers. And slowly, something extraordinary happened. Both empires hesitated, because continuing to fight meant firing through ships, saving their own civilians. Humanity had turned morality into a battlefield neither side wanted to cross. The clashes slowed, then stalled, not through victory, through conscience. Back in the chamber, realization spread. Humanity wasn't enforcing peace. They were making war emotionally unbearable. The presiding elder whispered, almost to himself, they are changing what strength means. But even as hope began to grow, a classified alert reached the ambassador alone. Deep space sensors detected an unknown signal. Ancient, massive, awakening beyond the galactic rim. Something older than the elder races themselves had noticed the sudden shift in civilization behavior, and it was moving closer. Humanity had changed the galaxy's future. Now, something from its past was coming to judge whether that future deserved to exist. The ambassador's face paled slightly, because forgiveness had just attracted an enemy no one had prepared for. The signal was older than every civilization in the chamber, older than the council, older perhaps than war itself, and it was coming fast. Long-range sensors struggled to interpret the approaching anomaly. It wasn't a fleet. It wasn't a species anyone recognized. Space itself bent around it, gravitational patterns shifting like memory being rewritten. Ancient archives unlocked automatically. Protocols written by precursor civilizations long extinct. One translation appeared across every council display. Observer entity detected. Panic spread instantly. Legends whispered across thousands of cultures spoke of watchers beyond the galactic rim, beings that evaluated civilizations when they reached critical thresholds. Most myths ended the same way. Judgment, Extinction. The presiding elder's voice trembled. Human ambassador, did your actions trigger this? She answered honestly, yes. The chamber erupted. You have doomed us. But she did not argue, because she had suspected this possibility from the beginning. Human historians had noticed gaps in galactic timelines, sudden disappearances of advanced societies, just as they achieved unified cooperation or total domination. 2 outcomes, 2 failures. Now the galaxy stood at a third path, and something ancient had come to see which direction they would choose. The entity arrived without spectacle. No weapons fired. No invasion. Stars simply dimmed as its presence entered known space. A vast structure unfolded, neither machine nor organism, composed of shifting light patterns impossible for most species to comprehend fully. A single transmission echoed simultaneously into every mind, every translation system, every consciousness capable of perception. Civilization status, transitional. The words carried neither hostility nor kindness, only evaluation. The chamber froze. What does it want? Someone whispered. The answer came immediately. Observation of response to power. Scenes from recent events appeared. The skull in the chamber, the civilian shield, at Haven 12, human evacuation fleets protecting enemies. The entity was reviewing them, judging them. Humanity had not merely influenced the galaxy. They had triggered a test. A second message followed. Previous civilizations failed. Images flashed, ancient empires choosing domination, others collapsing into endless conflict once hierarchy broke. Each outcome ended with silence. Erasure. The implication struck everyone at once. The galaxy had been reset before. Many times. The presiding elder struggled to speak. What determines survival? The entity paused, then responded. Definition of strength. All attention turned toward humanity, because, unknowingly, they had already answered that question. The ambassador stepped forward, not as humanity's representative anymore, but as a voice for every being watching. Strength, she said slowly, is the ability to destroy, and choosing not to. Silence followed. The entity processed. Time stretched unbearably. Then new projections appeared, futures branching outward. In one, civilizations returned to fear and domination. The branch ended abruptly in darkness. In another, chaos consumed cooperation. That branch faded as well. A third path emerged, unstable, difficult, uncertain, but continuing forward. Marked by collaboration, memory, responsibility shared across species. The entity transmitted again. Novel response detected. Hope flickered. Civilization granted continuation. Across the galaxy, stars brightened again. The pressure lifted. The observer began withdrawing beyond the rim. But before leaving, it sent one final message, directed not just at humanity, but everyone. Forgiveness is rare. Preserve it. And then it was gone. The chamber remained silent long after. No cheers. No celebrations. Only understanding. The galaxy had survived not because it was strongest, but because, for the first time, it tried to be better. The presiding elder turned to the ambassador. You never sought revenge. She shook her head, gently. Revenge, end stories, she said. We wanted a future. Outside, fleets, once prepared for war, began transmitting cooperation requests instead of threats. The Accord initiative gained volunteers. Former enemies opened dialogue channels. Not perfect, not peaceful, but different. Humanity never claimed a throne. They didn't need one, because influence built on empathy proved stronger than fear ever was. And somewhere among the stars, civilizations finally understood the lesson humanity had carried from its own painful past. Power changes the universe, but mercy allows it to continue.